King's Dominion, the park that everyone thought was going to be the next Cedar Fair superstar, and it never took off. Back in the late 2000s and early 2010s, when Cedar Fair took control after Paramount, they seemed to make a big statement. In 2008, they relocated Dominator from Geauga Lake to this park. Now yes, it may have been a relocation, and not a brand new coaster, however this is a massive 3-train B&M Flows coaster with 5 inversions, and it really gave this park another star coaster besides Volcano at the time. Then in 2010, they unveiled Intimidator 305. This is a massive giga coaster with low-to-the-ground, high-speed twists, turns, and airtime hills. This was absolutely huge for the industry. Intimidator 305 was like they took a Maverick at Cedar Point and then added 200 more feet to it. Never before has anybody seen such an intense coaster as this one, with the twists as fast as this one too. This immediately became a huge bucket list coaster for coaster enthusiasts, and a bucket list park for everyone too at this point. Everyone was expecting this to be the next big Cedar Fair park, as I mentioned before. We were expecting to see huge expansions with coasters galore. However, after 2010, everything stopped. For the next 8 years, the park would not see a single new coaster. In fact, 3 were moved in this time period and 4 since Cedar Fair took over. Yes, the park saw new flats, kids rides, and of course, huge park improvements like the addition of the 4 o'clock, singing mushrooms, and repainting of several classic rides, but this was not pleasing to the guests or the park. The first coaster removal for Cedar Fair was Hypersonic XLC in late 2007, early 2008. This was foreseeable though. The coaster had lots of problems, and Cedar Fair just seems to get rid of any rides they don't like maintaining on a regular basis. This was also a prototype and was down more than it was up, so people were sad, but ultimately they understood. Next up was Shockwave in 2015. This was the park's Togo stand-up coaster, and many people weren't sad about this. It's a Togo stand-up. Need I say more? Also in 2015, Hurler would be closed to apparently retrack and be reworked. At the time, it was starting to be worked on possibly by the park, or maybe they contracted GCI to come in and fix it. However, the project was never finished and the coaster sat abandoned until 2017. In 2017, people were just ultimately done with Cedar Fair and King's Dominion. After 7 years of no new standout ride and only half-decent flats in Windseeker and Delirium replacing these massive coaster icons for the park, it was really starting to get to people. Especially since they announced that the new 2017 attraction would be yet another Planet Snoopy expansion. However, the park also created the tagline, "There's really more coming" to this edition. At first, this was thought to be the first part of a new kids expansion, and the second one was soon to come, which is what really more coming meant. However, some enthusiasts joked around the "really more coming" stood for RMC. The joke actually became reality when the park announced Twisted Timbers, an RMC redo of Hurler. Finally, after 8 years of no coaster, the park finally saw one. The park now had an amazing lineup of star coasters and supporting coasters too. Twisted Timbers, Intimidator 305, Volcano the Blast Coaster, and Dominator. However, these rides only operated for a short time together. Volcano was closed in early 2018 due to some issues with the ride. The park stated that they would just have to order some parts for it and refurbish the ride's structure. The ride would stay closed for the rest of the year, and the ride crew was actually assigned to new rides, which wasn't really a good sign. The kicker came in early 2019, in February, that King's Dominion would remove the ride. The park found that issues with the coaster were worse than they thought. The amount of money they would have to dump into rebuilding not only the mountain, but the coaster too, would be too expensive. Also, not to mention, Intamin is like a toxic ex-girlfriend or boyfriend to Cedar Fair. They really do not want to be with them. The chain has pretty much cut ties with the company due to all the huge issues their rides have had in the chain. For example, look at Intimidator 305 in the same park, Top Thrill Dragster, and Shoot the Rapids at Cedar Point. This was the absolute last straw, not only for enthusiasts, but for the locals and longtime park visitors. Volcano was the park's most popular ride and general public's favorite coaster. Many people actually stopped going to King's Dominion on a regular basis due to this. Their attendance numbers have been continuously dropping over the past 10 years. Why was the park treated like this? Simple. Intimidator 305 did not perform as well as Cedar Fair thought it would. Not only did the ride have the usual Intamin problems, but it even scared guests away. The ride was literally so intense that the general public refused to ride it. The first turn was completely reprofiled after its opening season due to huge amounts of guests blacking out from the high G-forces. During the 2010 season, the park actually had to put trim brakes on the drop to slow it down. That's just sad. Even 10 years after the ride opened, it still hasn't gained any popularity with the guests. Dominator serves as the park's current most popular coaster, and even then, it doesn't show the signs of it. Back in 2019, King's Dominion released some numbers on Instagram, and Dominator had the most rides that year, not even topping 1 million. So clearly, due to these numbers, Cedar Fair had no interest in making this park the next superstar in the chain, and it's just one of their regional parks now, getting something new maybe every 10 years. However, I think the park and the chain is realizing that if they don't do something soon, this could become the next Michigan's Adventure. Also, just like Volcano, the park announced in the offseason that the park's Hut's top spin, the Crypt, would be removed. This once again really hurt the locals. However, the park seems to have plans to immediately place this ride. Parts for an SNS free spin have been on site for a while now and will most likely be replacing the Crypt. This is actually a perfect replacement for the ride like this in my opinion. However, Volcano's plot of land is still vacant. Enthusiasts are hoping for something big, and so are the locals. I think King's Dominion realizes this, that they have to go big with this one, because they aren't just worrying about complaining enthusiasts, they have to worry about their complaining audience, the entire audience. So what could be the park's next huge addition? After that long intro, let's finally dive in. When looking at possible new coasters for King's Dominion, you have to remember that Busch Gardens Williamsburg is only an hour away. These two parks seem to play off each other and have a huge competition. Katy is currently losing big time, and they need something to contrast BGW's lineup. Volcano's plot is also very large, and you can really fit anything in there. The park could also certainly expand it out too. I mean, the park has 400 acres of land owned, and not much of that is developed. According to Airtime Thrills, only 38% of this land is developed. I don't know where he got that number from, but it seems accurate basing on Google Maps. Option 1. A B&M wing coaster. Now, this is an obvious choice. Plans leaked of a proposed B&M wing coaster of smaller size a while ago. King's Dominion may have decided to withdraw the idea since it had mixed reactions. GP eat the B&M wing coasters up. They're fun, smooth, and reliable. However, I think the small version of this ride will not satisfy the guests like the park may hope to. I personally think it works in this park though. The park doesn't need a super high capacity ride. However, the smaller model still actually gives good capacity just in case the park does get more popular. However, if they really wanted a true replacement for Volcano, they could step it up a notch and get a larger wing coaster or even a launched wing coaster like Thunderbird at Holiday World. I think this option is very plausible since there are none in the area, and the Cedar Fair loves B&M. They're reliable, and the GP eats them up. Option 2. A new launch coaster. If the park wanted a true successor for Volcano and have a crazy new launch coaster, they have a few options. I think Intamin is out of the question here though. With Cedar Fair's relationship with them and how bad it is, and Pantheon opening just down the road, I can't see one coming. However, two companies that Cedar Fair seems to like and makes good reliable launch coasters are Gerstlauer and Mack Rides. Gerstlauer is definitely the budget option here, and they could get a custom launched infinity coaster with a great forceful layout and a punchy launch. However, Gerstlauers are very intense. All of the Gerstlauers I've ridden pack the positive G's and are very hard to continuously re-ride due to this. Shellraiser is one of the most intense coasters I've been on, and I know many people who've grayed out on it. However, the launch packs a huge punch, and I'm sure they could ask Gerstlauer to make a less intense ride. Now, Mack Rides has been making a huge splash in the industry. They're reliable, and people seem to love them. Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City gets rave reviews and is constantly seen in top coaster lists for many enthusiasts. Copperhead Strike at Carowinds is also seen as an awesome coaster with a great layout, and some people even went to say it's the best coaster in the park. I personally think a Mack Rides launched or Extreme Spinner would be the best and most likely option if the wing coaster doesn't come to be. Not only would the GP eat it up, but you'd have enthusiasts flocking from all over the country to go and ride it. They're also pretty reliable from what I've seen, and it wouldn't surprise me if Cedar Fair filled up all their big parks with Mack launch coasters. Option 3. Another B&M coaster. B&M has lots of different models, and one that is always on the wish list for King's Dominion is a B&M Hyper. This would be the perfect thing to get people into the park and complement i305's super intense layout. However, many people say that because of Apollo's Chariot at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, they won't build one here. However, Apollo was the first B&M Hyper, and it looks completely different from the newer B&M Hypers. Also, Hershey Park had a similar situation where Skyrush was too intense, so they installed Candemonium to fix that gap. Now, Great Adventure is also close to Hershey, nowhere near as close as Busch Gardens Williamsburg and King's Dominion, but close enough. When Candemonium was announced, many people did notice the similarities between Nitro and Candemonium. However, instead of calling Hershey copycats, people got excited. The GP absolutely loved B&M Hypers. They wouldn't even have to go that big with it either, and they could make it very different from Apollo. They could build a smaller version like Mako. Not only would it be the most reliable option, but it would also have great capacity and would certainly draw in a large crowd. This would be my personal favorite option, however, I simply don't see it happening in the near future, unfortunately. There are also a few other models that King's Dominion could look at, like a Flyer, a Dive, or something else too, like an Invert, but I really don't see any coming to the park, especially with a Dive being not too far away, and same thing with an Invert. If anything, those would be more similar than the two Hypers. Option 4, a GCI wooden coaster. I personally don't see this coming, but the idea has been tossed around. I feel like this wouldn't be the right replacement for Volcano either. It would be an amazing addition, but just not the right one. Maybe if they removed Grizzly in the future it would make sense, but with the park's current 3 wooden coasters, it just doesn't make sense in my opinion. I see this as an unlikely option, but it's definitely not impossible. Also, an airtime-filled wooden coaster may seem too similar to Twisted Timbers, even though the ride would be completely different. While technically Twisted Timbers is a steel coaster, GP would just see it as another airtime-filled wooden coaster, and yes, they could make it a twisted layout, but once again, it would still seem too similar to Twisted Timbers in the GP's eyes. It would also not be a worthy replacement in the common guest's eyes. However, it would be a worthy replacement in enthusiasts' eyes. But let's not forget, parks don't satisfy enthusiasts, they satisfy the general public and what their audience is. Okay, I think this video is getting a little long, so let's wrap it up. What do you want to come to King's Dominion? Do you think these options are ideal or possible? Definitely let me know in the comments below, and if you like this type of prediction video, let me know because I'll do more of them. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more theme park content, and I hope to see you all in the next video.